Assalamu alaikum, children. Once again, I welcome you all to our Islamic session. Children, in the last session, we have started with our first lesson, studying the past. And we have learnt the meaning of past and what is history. We have also learnt who is a historian, who is an archaeologist. In today's session, we will try to understand timeline, which is an important tool of history. And we will also learn about the sources of history. Let's begin. What is a timeline? A timeline is a graph of events in the order they happened. Listing events in the order they happened is also called chronological order. You often get this question in your examination. Arrange the following events in chronological order. Means you need to arrange them in the order of their occurrence. A timeline shows the dates on which the events took place in the correct order. It helps us to know what happened before a particular event and what followed it, means what happened after that particular event. It is an important tool for studying history and remembering dates. Let's learn how a timeline is made. Look at the timeline given below carefully. We take the center point as year 0. We begin to count from the year 1. We borrowed this system of counting from Europe, where the birth of Jesus Christ was taken as the starting point. The time before the birth of Christ is known as BCE, or before Common Era, and counted backwards from 1. The time after the birth of Christ is known as CE, or Common Era. We count forward in this case, starting from the year 1, because these events took place after Christ was born. So 500 BCE means 500 years before the birth of Christ. When we were in the year 2016, it means 2016 years were passed since the birth of Christ. In a timeline, BCE falls on the left hand side and CE falls on the right hand side. The timeline given above extends up to 3000 BCE to the left and 3000 CE to the right. Let's do a small activity. The year when Alexander the Great came to India is marked on the timeline given above. What is the year? Now see the timeline carefully. The year when Alexander the Great came to India is marked on it. Which year he came to India? Yes, correct. He came to India in 326 BCE, that is before Common Era or before the birth of Christ. Now take a pencil in your hand and mark the following years on the timeline. The first one is 1500 BCE. Where will 1500 come? BCE, to the left hand side. But can you see 1500 anywhere written? No. So where will it come? It will come between the year 1000 and 2000. In the middle of 1000 and 2000, 1500 will come to the left hand side. Then you need to mark 1947 CE. Yes, it will come to the right hand side, but the year 1947 is not mentioned. So it will come between 1000 and 2000. Towards the end of 1000, you'll mark 1947. Then 2017 CE. It will also come to the right hand side. Since it is not mentioned, you'll mark it between 2000 and 3000. Let's move on to the last subtopic of this lesson, sources of history. Historical sources are at their most basic level something that tells about history. It may be a document, a picture, a book, a film, any sort of artifact. Now, what is an artifact? It is any object made by humans of historical or cultural interest. In other words, various objects that the historians study to know about the past are known as the sources of history, such as old pots, old coins, buildings, newspapers, paintings, and so on. Here is one more activity related to the sources of history. Let's do it together. Study the pictures of the sources of history given below. Write the sentences given in the help box under the correct picture. Here are some pictures of the sources of history. We need to read the sentence and write the correct sentence under the correct picture. Now let's study these pictures carefully. The first picture is of some stone weapons. The second picture is of some coins, old coins. The third one is books. The fourth one is newspapers. And the last picture is a monument. Monument is a historical building or a historical statue. Now let's read the sentence. The first one, books from the past tell us what happened then. So the first sentence, where will it come? Yes, it will come under the third picture. It will come under the picture of books. The second sentence, old coins show us how people bought and sold things. Where will this sentence come? Under the second picture of the coins. Now the third sentence. Monuments show us the kind of buildings that were built in the past. Yes, where do you see a monument? In the last picture. So this sentence, the third sentence, we'll write it under the last picture. The fourth sentence. Old newspapers helps us to know the events that took place in the past. Yes, this sentence will come under the fourth picture, the picture of the newspapers. Now, old stone tools tell us about what people used in the past to make things with. Old stone tools. Where do you see? In the first picture. So the last sentence will come under the first picture. I want you all to write these sentences with a pencil under the correct picture as discussed. Children, we have completed the lesson. Let's quickly summarize the key concepts. History is a record of events that took place in the past. We study history through various tools such as monuments, books, newspapers, weapons, and so on. Historians and archaeologists are people who study history and help us understand it. Timeline is an important tool of history. It helps us to remember dates. Sources of history are old stone tools, old pots, old coins, paintings, buildings, newspapers, and books. I hope all the concepts are clear to you all. Let's discuss the question and answers. Answer the following questions. The first one, what is the difference between a historian and an archaeologist? Yes, what is the difference? A historian is a person who study and write about history. An archaeologist is a person who digs the ground to find things such as coins, tools, and other sources. These sources help us to know about what happened in the past or history. Question number 2. Give an example of a tool of history. Timeline, which is an important tool of history. Then question 3. What are sources of history? As learnt earlier, various objects that the historians study to know about the past are known as the sources of history. Example, old photographs, old pots, books, buildings, old newspapers, etc. are some of the important sources of history. Question 4. Write the difference between BCE and CE. BCE stands for Before Common Era and CE stands for Common Era. What's the answer? The time before the birth of Christ is known as BCE or Before Common Era and counted backwards from 1. And the time after the birth of Christ is known as CE or Common Era. We count forward in this case starting from the year 1. Children, we have completed this lesson over here. I'll be sending you all the notes on the broadcast group. I want you all to complete them and I'll also be giving you all some homework. That's all for the day. See you all in the next session.